When we wake up in the morning, most of us immediately start thinking about the problems in our lives. These problems are nothing more than memories stored in the brain, and each memory is connected to specific people, places, and events from our past. You see, the brain is a record of the past. The moment you wake up and begin thinking about your problems, you're already thinking in the past, and every one of those memories has an emotion attached to it. Emotions are the end product of past experiences. So when you recall a memory, you're reliving the emotion tied to that experience. Now, how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So when your day begins, your state of being is rooted in the past, which means you're bound to repeat it. The familiar past will sooner or later become the predictable future. If you believe your thoughts have something to do with your destiny and you're unable to think greater than how you feel, then your feelings, which are often rooted in past experiences, become your method of thinking. This means you're stuck in the past. And when you're stuck in the past, you're just going to keep creating the same life over and over again. So, what do most people do next? They reach for their phones. They check their messages, emails, social media. They scroll through their news feeds, looking at the same old stories, seeing the same people, getting triggered by the same emotions. And before they know it, they're completely connected to everything familiar in their life. They go through their morning routine, getting out of bed on the same side, using the bathroom, drinking coffee, taking a shower, getting dressed, driving to work the same way, and interacting with the same people. They push the same emotional buttons, and their entire day becomes a predictable series of events, just like a program. When you live like this, you've essentially lost your free will to a set of memorized behaviors. There's no invisible hand doing this to you. You're doing it to yourself. And this routine becomes so ingrained that it turns into a subconscious program. By the time you're 35 years old, 95% of who you are is a memorized set of behaviors, emotional reactions, unconscious habits, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions that function like a computer program. So when you say with your 5% of conscious mind, I want to change, I want to be successful, I want to be happy, your body, which has been running on autopilot for years, is on a completely different program. So how do you begin to make those changes? You have to get beyond the analytical mind, because what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. This is where meditation comes in. Through meditation, you can teach your brain to slow down its brain waves, to shift into the operating system where real change can happen. But most people wait for a crisis or trauma to finally make up their minds to change. My message to you is, why wait? You don't have to wait for pain and suffering to change. You can change from a state of joy and inspiration. Right now, more people are waking up. They're starting to realize that they've been living 70% of their lives in survival mode, constantly anticipating the worst-case scenario based on past experiences. And what are they doing? Out of the infinite possibilities in the quantum field, they're selecting the worst possible outcome and emotionally embracing it with fear. They condition their bodies to be in a constant state of fear. Do that enough times, and you might have a panic attack without even knowing why. Your body has been programmed to react. Now people become addicted to these emotions. They use the problems and conditions in their lives to reaffirm their limitations because it makes them feel something. So when it comes time to change, and you ask them why they are the way they are, they begin to recall the events that shaped them, producing the same chemical reactions in their brain and body as if the event is happening all over again. They're firing and wiring the same neural circuits, sending the same emotional signals to the body. And what's the relevance? Your body is your unconscious mind. If you sit down and start thinking about a future worst-case scenario, and you begin to feel the fear associated with that scenario, your body doesn't know the difference between what's happening in the outer world and what you're creating in your mind. So most people are constantly reaffirming their emotional states. When it's time to give up that emotion, they say, I want to change. but the body has been conditioned to be stronger than the mind, and the servant has now become the master. So, when they step into the unknown, they'd rather feel guilt or suffering because at least they can predict it. The unknown is a scary place for most people because it's uncertain. People tell me, I can't predict my future, I'm in the unknown. And I always say, the best way to predict your future is to create it, not from the known, but from the unknown. So what thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors do you want to demonstrate in one day? The act of mentally rehearsing an action, closing your eyes and rehearsing what you want to do, is powerful. If you're truly present, your brain doesn't know the difference between what you're imagining and what you're experiencing in the 3D world. So when you do this, you begin to install the neurological hardware in your brain as if the event has already occurred. Now your brain is no longer a record of the past, but a map to the future. And if you keep doing this, priming it in this way, the hardware becomes a software program. You may just find yourself acting like a new person, a happier person. Now the hardest part is teaching your body emotionally what the future will feel like before the actual experience. This means you can't wait for your success to feel empowered. You can't wait for your wealth to feel abundant. You can't wait for your new relationship to feel love or your healing to feel whole. That's the old model of reality, cause and effect, waiting for something outside of us to change how we feel inside of us. And when we feel better inside, we pay attention to whoever or whatever caused it. But that's living in lack. When you invest in yourself, you invest in your future. So take some time out of your busy life to disconnect from your world. Turn off your cell phone, shut down your computer, and sit your body down for a few minutes. Close your eyes, take a few breaths, and center yourself. When you bring your attention to the present moment, you have more energy to create with. If your mind starts to wander to the predictable future or the familiar past, don't worry, that's normal. Just become aware of it and gently bring yourself back to the present moment. In the present moment, you're the most creative. Ask yourself, can I be defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past? What do you want in your life? Take the time to answer that question because as you begin to contemplate and think about the answer, you're changing your brain. When your brain starts firing in new sequences, new patterns, and new combinations, that's the beginning of changing your mind. Next, decide on the emotions you'll feel when you create that future. Teach your body emotionally what that future is going to feel like. Don't get up until you begin to feel those emotions. Then mentally rehearse who you're going to be when you open your eyes. Think about the things you have to do, the choices you have to make, the steps you need to take. Review them over and over again in your mind. You can't move into your future holding on to the biology of your past. Decide what thoughts you can't bring into your future. Write them down. Thoughts like, I can't, it's too hard, I'll never change, I'll start tomorrow, what's wrong with me, and it's someone else's fault. Decide on the behaviors or habits you need to change. How do you talk? Do you complain? Do you blame others? Do you make excuses? Do you feel sorry for yourself? Become so conscious of these behaviors that you won't go unconscious again. When you're thinking about the future you want to create, it's important to let go of emotions that don't serve you anymore. Think of emotions like baggage you carry with you wherever you go. Some of this baggage is helpful and keeps you moving forward, but other pieces of it only slow you down. If you're aiming for a life of wealth, happiness, and health, then emotions like lack, insecurity, and fear are the ones you need to leave behind. They don't fit into the future you're trying to build. Let's say you want to be wealthy. Wealth isn't just about having money, it's also about feeling abundant, confident, and secure. But if you're constantly feeling like there isn't enough, like you're always missing out or falling short, then that feeling of lack becomes a part of who you are. It's like trying to move forward while dragging a heavy weight behind you. You might still make progress, but it will be slow and difficult. You can't expect to create wealth if you're always feeling poor inside. To attract wealth, you have to start feeling wealthy even before the money shows up in your life. Now consider your health. Health isn't just about your body, it's also about your mind and emotions. If you want to be healthy, you can't let fear or insecurity guide you. Fear can show up as worry about getting sick or anxiety about your body not being good enough. Insecurity might make you doubt your ability to take care of yourself or stick to healthy habits. But these emotions can actually create the very problems you're worried about. If you're constantly afraid of getting sick, your body might start to react as if you're already ill. Your mind is powerful enough to turn those fears into reality. To be healthy, you need to feel secure, confident, and at peace. You have to trust that your body is capable of healing and maintaining itself. So how do you get rid of these unhelpful emotions? It's not something that happens overnight. It's a process of conditioning your body to think and feel differently. Every day, you have to practice new thoughts and emotions that match the future you want. If you want to feel abundant, start practicing gratitude for what you already have. If you want to feel healthy, start noticing the things that are already going right in your body. Over time, these new thoughts and emotions will become second nature, and your body will start to believe them as truth. This process is about more than just thinking positively. It's about changing your entire personality. Your personality is made up of how you think, act, and feel. These three things are deeply connected. How you think affects how you feel, which then influences how you act. For example, if you think thoughts of lack, you'll feel anxious or stressed, and you might act by avoiding opportunities or spending money out of fear. But if you change just one of these elements, your thoughts, your feelings, or your actions, the other two will start to change as well. Let's break it down further. If you start thinking thoughts of abundance, like believing that there's always enough, you'll start to feel more relaxed and confident. This change in feelings might lead you to take different actions, like investing in yourself or taking a chance on a new opportunity. Those new actions then reinforce your thoughts of abundance, creating a positive feedback loop. The more you practice this, the more it becomes who you are. Your personality shifts, and as it does, your reality starts to shift too. This is what it means to create your personal reality. Your life is a reflection of your personality, and your personality is something you have control over. By changing your thoughts, feelings, and actions, you're essentially changing the blueprint of your life. You become the cause of the changes you see in your world. This is not about blaming yourself for your past, but about empowering yourself to create a different future. Start measuring the effects of these changes in your life. Notice how your reality shifts when you start feeling more abundant or confident. Pay attention to how your health improves when you let go of fear and embrace trust. These changes might be subtle at first, but over time, they will add up to something significant. You'll find that your outer world begins to match the new inner world you've created. There's always a risk when you step into the unknown. There's always a risk when you start expressing love, trusting the process, and believing in something greater than yourself. But if you're living in survival mode, you'll never want to close your eyes and go within. The unknown may be uncertain, but it's also where all possibilities exist. When you practice this belief system, you're telling your brain that the event has already happened. You're training your body to feel as though it's already done. And when you do this consistently, you'll start to see changes in your life. You'll find that you always get what you visualize, and it doesn't take years or even months. It can happen in as little as 4 days. Of cause and effect, waiting for something outside of you to change how you feel inside of you. When you feel differently inside of you, you pay attention to whoever or whatever caused that. And that event in and of itself is called a memory. To wait for our environment to give us relief. The quantum model of reality is about causing and effect, which means when you feel whole, you begin to heal. When you feel empowered, you're going to be successful. When you're worthy enough, you'll feel abundant. When you are in love with life and in love with yourself, you will find an equal, or it will find you. And when you are in awe of the moment, the mystical is going to bless you in a way that you never anticipated. And when you are in a state of gratitude, your job is on the way. It's causing an effect. And by the way, what is the emotional signature of gratitude? Don't you give thanks when you get something or you receive something? So then, what if you were to begin to give thanks or feel thanks before it manifested? Would your body, as the unconscious mind, believe it's in the future experience in the present moment? Because gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. And so we don't pray in our work to have our prayers answered. We get up as if our prayers are already answered. It is that state of mind and body that I know that requires a clear intention and an elevated emotion. And the clear intention is an act of the mind and the brain, and an elevated emotion is when you open your heart. When you combine those two elements, you just moved from living in your past to living in your future. So then, here's the question. Can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the experience has already occurred? Can you fall in love with a future potential that already exists in the quantum field? And how many potentials exist in the quantum field? Infinite potentials in the quantum field. Can you select a new potential in the quantum field and emotionally embrace that future reality before it's made manifest to such degree that your body, as the unconscious mind, is believing it's living in that future reality in the present moment, and you're signaling new genes and new ways? If there's physical evidence in your brain and body to look like the experience has already happened, there's evidence there physically, by thought alone. Relax, because the experience is going to find you. There's an intelligence that's giving you life right now. It's keeping your heart beating and digesting your food and organizing trillions of functions in every single cell of your body. It's organizing mutations in your DNA. There's some invisible force that's giving you life, but that same intelligence that's keeping your heart beating and digesting your food is the same intelligence that's creating supernovas in distant galaxies and causing flowers to bloom. It's both personal and universal. It's within you, and it's all around you, and you can't see it, and you can't smell it, and you can't taste it, and you can't feel it, but it is the giver of life, and it is a consciousness. And consciousness is awareness, and awareness is paying attention, and it is the observer observing you into life. And you know, when I tell our advanced students, either you're going to be defined by a vision of the future or the memories of the past. And then people say, why are you so bitter? Why are you so frustrated? Why are you suffering so much? And your brain, in that emotion, you're in the emotion, which means you're in the chemical residue of the past, is going to call up the event because you're emotionally connected to it. And you're going to say, I'm this way because of that past experience. So then imagine what I do with people. We have people that have been abused. We have people that have been traumatized, that have been assaulted. We have people that have had very, very difficult pasts. And have you ever heard me say to revisit the event? Have you ever heard me say that? Never do we need to revisit the event, because once you do, you open the box. But what we want to do is overcome the emotion, because that's just what's lasting from the event. So you sit a person down, and the moment you sit them down, what do you think the body is going to do? It's going to look for something to recreate that emotion, because that's the person's identity. Are you with me still? So if I inspire the person to sit there, and they're sitting there, and all of a sudden they're noticing that they're hot and they're irritated and their stomach is twisting, and all of a sudden it's a group of sensations, a group of feelings that they have called all along frustration. But the different sensations, the moment you name it, it becomes an emotion. But what it is just bodily sensations. It's energy that's stuck in the body. So the body is looking to go back to the past. It's believing it's in the past. Are you with me still? So if the person becomes aware that their body is doing that, and like training an animal, allow the body to feel that emotion and then settle it down into the present moment. When you settle it down into the present moment, the body starts to trust the present moment and move out of the past. and there's a release of energy. Then the body goes, wait a second, what's going to happen in the next moment? And it starts doing that, and it starts to try anticipate the future. And you settle the body back down into the present moment. And every time you do that, you're telling the body it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind, and your will is getting greater than the program. And all of a sudden, you start to lower the volume to that emotion. And when you begin to break the addiction to that emotion, the side effect of breaking that addiction is called joy. It's called freedom. All of a sudden, the body's saying, I don't want to be tormented anymore. Now, does that mean you shouldn't grieve over things that you lose? Grieving is a biological process. It's neural pruning. It's a death of circuitry. It's a death of emotions. It's the absence of void of something in your life. And that's important. In grief, sooner or later, you've got to come to a greater understanding about death, a greater understanding about loss, a greater understanding so that you can adapt to those conditions. Every time I sit with someone and they start complaining about their life, and I let them go for a few minutes, and then I go, oh, you know what I say to them? You only complain about your life when it's not working. And the emotion that you're feeling right now is keeping you connected to the past. You never do this when your life is working. And so I don't have a problem with moving through the stages of emotions. But I also know that what a person really wants more than anything else is to be free. People want to be free. And I have witnessed transformation. It was so alive in their mind that they began to live as if that future reality was happening in the present moment. So here's my question. Can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the event has already occurred? The latest research in neuroscience says you can change your brain from living in the past to living in the future. And can you fall in love with that vision to such a degree that you come out of your resting state and change guilt or suffering into inspiration and joy and gratitude? To such a degree that your body, as the unconscious mind, does not know the difference between that external event and what you're creating internally, so that your body believes it's living in that future, in the present moment, and you begin to signal new genes in new ways to change your body to look like the event has already occurred. The latest research in epigenetics says you can change your body by thought alone. Now reason this with me. If there's physical evidence in your brain and body to look like the event has already occurred, your brain and body are no longer living in the past, they're living in the future, and you will walk right into your vision, something new you wanted to experience. And the moment you started thinking about this experience, the moment you started contemplating this potential reality, you turned on a part of your brain called the frontal lobe, the crowning achievement of the human being. It's 40% of your entire brain. It is the creative center, and it has connections to all other parts of the brain. And the moment you said, what would it be like to be a leader? What would it be like to be successful? What would it be like to have this vision come true? The moment you asked that open-ended question, you turned on this part of the brain because the rest of the brain is just a bunch of automatic programs. And now the frontal lobe, the creative center, wakes up and it has connections to the entire brain. It's the CEO, it's the boss, it's the symphony leader of the brain. And the moment you get creative, the frontal lobe begins to select different networks of neurons that are stored in your brain from things you've learned or experienced. And as you begin to think a what-if question, it begins to select these different networks and begins to seamlessly piece them together and making your brain fire in new sequences and in new patterns and new combinations. And whenever you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind, because mind is the brain in action. Mind is the brain at work. And the moment those neurons fire in tandem, you get a picture in your mind, a hologram, a vision. For those people who are passionate, that thought that they're thinking begins to create an elevated emotion. They become inspired, they feel enthusiastic, they become passionate. They started to open their hearts. And all of a sudden, they're combining a clear intention with an elevated emotion. And it's the combination of a clear intention and an elevated emotion in our research over and over again that proves then the person now is changing fundamentally, changing biologically, changing internally. And their brain and body are moving from living in the past into living in the future. When you do that, when you had that moment, you came out of your resting state and then you started to write down all the things you were going to do to get to that vision, all the choices you were going to make, all of the experiences or goals you wanted to achieve, and all of the emotions and the joy you would feel. And when you were doing that, you were setting your sights towards that destiny. And then you did something really brilliant. You wrote down the choices you weren't going to make. You became aware of the behaviors you weren't going to demonstrate. You began to review certain experiences you wanted to stay away from, and then you looked at the emotions that would bring you to a lower level, and you began to separate the old self from the new self. And when you begin to do that and you're observing the old self, it means you're no longer the program. Now you're the consciousness observing the program, and that's when you begin to objectify your subjective self. And so the moment you stop making the same choices that you always make, get ready, because it's going to be uncomfortable. And that's the moment you're heading towards the new self. Do you think that you can change the circuits in your brain by thinking about it? So I did this experiment a little ways back. It took these people who never played the piano before, and they separated them into 4 categories. And they said, listen, we're going to scan your brains before you learn this exercise, and then we're going to scan your brain after. And all you have to do is show up for 2 hours a day and practice for 2 weeks, okay? And just follow the instructions. And we're going to hook your brain up to these sophisticated scans, and we're going to see what happens before and after. So they got with these people, and they said, okay, first group, here's the scales, and here's the chords. They're one-handed exercises. Practice them over and over again. Keep playing them. So they played every single day, 2 hours a day for 2 weeks. They scanned their brains before, they scanned their brains after. After 2 weeks, guess what happened? Whole new set of circuits lit up in their brain that never lit up before. That makes sense. You learn something new. Learning is making new connections. Repeating it over and over again is sustaining or maintaining those connections, and that's called memory. So they memorized what they were doing by physically practicing or personalizing what they learned. Make sense? Yes. Standard. Simple. It took the second group of people, and they said, listen, we want you to play 2 hours a day for 2 weeks. We're going to scan your brain before and after. You know what we're going to do? We're not going to tell you how to play anything. You just come and do whatever you want. Play whatever you want. So at the end of 2 weeks, guess what happened to them? Nothing. You know why? Because they couldn't remember what they had learned the day before. And they couldn't remember what they played the day before, and they had no structure. They got no instruction and no knowledge to be able to apply it to make some steady circuits. It took the third group of people, and they said, listen, don't even show up. Don't even create your day. Same thing, nothing happens. The last group of people, they said, listen, we want you to come 2 hours a day for 2 weeks. We're going to show you these one-handed exercises, but instead of you physically playing the piano, we want you to mentally rehearse over and over again those exercises. We know you're going to get tired, so we'll nudge you and we'll keep you awake. But you practice for 2 hours a day and you keep repeating those. The end of 2 weeks, they rescanned their brain, and guess what happened? Same area of the brain lit up as if they were actually playing the scales. Now you know what that means? They grew new circuits in their brain just by thinking about it, just by thinking, just by rehearsing. Now every time we learn something new, we make new circuits in the brain. If you learn anything new, learning is making a new connection in the brain. New neurological connection. Memory is maintaining or sustaining those connections, keeping them alive. And the only way that we maintain and sustain connections in the brain is by repetition. Repetition allows the neurons to develop a long-term relationship. So these people every single day made it the most important thing. They gave up their social engagements. They gave up television. They said, I'm going to rehearse. I'm going to mentally rehearse the greatest ideal of myself every single day. And as long as I keep doing it every day, what's going to happen to those circuits? They're going to light up and become the more sustainable circuits to act as a platform of who they will become in the future. During this process of rehearsal, while they were sitting down rehearsing who they were going to be, just like the piano players rehearsing over and over again, they had long moments where they lost track of time and space. In other words, they became so involved with what they were doing that when they opened their eyes or they lifted up their eye masks or when they turned the lights on in the room, it was 2 hours later, and it only seemed like 5 minutes. They were so involved with what they were doing that they lost the feedback of the body, they lost the feedback from the environment, and they lost track of time.